Welcome to Pop Monster, a podcast to feed all your pop culture cravings. My name is Sarah, a self-confessed superfan. This show will cover everything from reality TV chaos, nostalgic deep dives, and the latest in music, TV, movies, and books. So let's get into it. We have made it to Casa Amor, and I need to start by saying that I think we need a public forum, a town hall if you will, where people can feed in on what twists or updates can be made to the current format. Because I fear that it's getting stale, and I'd like a shake-up. Honestly, it's been stale for a good few seasons now. Whenever production decides to test things, it's always on that first episode coupling. I personally think we need to go back to basics on that. I don't want a repeat of the group discussion from this year. I like it when there's a chance for them to mix and mingle before they can step forward or stand in the heart of the boy or girl they're most interested in. But Casa really needs some work. Everyone knows what to expect, and it's been pretty repetitive since Liam broke the format. Otherwise, I've been feeling a bit low this week, and I guess everyone has their own ways of pulling themselves out of a slump. For me, I rely heavily on nostalgia, perhaps to a degree that is potentially excessive. My whole TikTok algorithm is just utter depressed women who are trying to escape reality by making their houses look like Sabrina the Teenage Witches and watching Mary-Kate and Ashley DVDs on their kitchen TVs. And all I can say is thank you for your service. You're all inspirations and deserve OBEs. I don't even have the energy for their level of commitment, so I've just been eating nerd clusters, listening to Breakaway by Kelly Clarkson, and outside of Love Island, I'm rewatching Buffy. And I need to set up an alarm system that triggers a welfare check if I'm watching that show again. It's a sickness, and I cannot believe that we're already halfway through this series of Love Island. I'm still debating what I want to cover next once it's over. I'm torn between old Real Housewives seasons, Summer House, some teen shows from the early 2000s, or some other reality dating shows. But I'm very open to your suggestions, either on Instagram at PopMonsterPod or in the comments section of this podcast episode. All right, let's get started with Sunday's episode, which picks up on the aftermath of the recoupling and heralds the start of Casa Amor. So we open up on the morning after the recoupling, and whenever there's a conversation going on that's actually interesting, I know they're about to get a text. We need to see more of these chats. For this one, it was just the girls talking about what they dressed up as when they were kids. Please, I beg you, ITV, let us have even the smallest insights into the Islanders' interests, personalities, or anecdotes about their lives. It's a million times more interesting than all of these repetitive, generic conversations about where everyone's heads are at. I get that these scenes aren't moving the plot forward, but I need these little sprinkles in there for colour. There was so much more of this in earlier series. Show me the friendship chats, I beg of you. Anyway, at least we're getting a challenge. This time, they're testing their connections with Touch of Love. Basically, it's the kissing challenge, but this time the girls are the ones with blindfolds on, and the boys will be doing some groping. Now, I have a dark sidebar, but I'm trash and watch every dating show under the sun, including one shit show called MILF Manor, where a bunch of cougars are living in a house with all of their sons. And I have this vivid, traumatic memory of them playing a similar game, and I still shudder when I think about them groping their own sons and being able to recognize them by touch. Truly, one of the darkest things I've ever seen, and that was the breaking point for me quitting that show. Alas, this time it's a complete ruse, and I was thinking that we'd probably get some Ofcom complaints about some of these boys crossing the boundaries of consent. Instead, Maya is back, and hello stranger, it's been a fucking month. I need them to retool how the host is featured. Regardless, she saunters in and tells the boys to be quiet, and she needs to tell this to her feet because her heels are clomping along the wooden paneling. It sounds like Godzilla has entered the villa. But it's time for the boys to escape to Casa Amor, and I really prefer it when the girls get to go to the new location. The guys are going to cheat regardless of which house they're in, whereas I feel the girls feel a bit less guilty when they're not still in the bed that they shared with their original boy. But let's introduce the 6 new boy bombshells, and I'm so sorry to these men, but they've done the girls dirty. They couldn't even be bothered to do a proper background check, so apparently it's actually soon to be 5 bombshells. I would say that the hottest is Carlos, who is 22 and a civil engineer. Facially, he is one of the best looking boys we've had this year, but I feared he would be limited by not being over 6 foot. Then there's Will, a 23-year-old model from Barnsley, and he's not doing much for me. It's like he's the love child of Blair Waldorf and Chuck Bass. But bless him, he still looks like he's going through puberty. He's got a very youthful look. Next is Aaron, who is 26 and a basketball player. Now, I reckon he'd be my personal number one, and he's one of the older options, but I reckon he looks the youngest. He's so baby-faced. Alright, then we have Tommy, who is 23 and an offence owner. I need to ask if they're making these men in a lab weird science style. I can't believe we have another Tommy who is the next anamorph transformation of the Murphy Men prototype. I guess this is a new viable option for the ladies if they're into that look but don't want to get caught up in the Murphy bloodline. Next we have a man, not a boy, Jordan, who is 28, 6'6", and a video editor. Hello Jordan, please help me make my clips promoting my podcast a little bit less shit. When I first saw him, I wasn't sure if he'd be any of the girls' types, but I'd like to thank him for at least upping the median age. Finally, we have the soon-to-be edited out Gabriel, a 24-year-old model pulling a Zoolander face. I already know that his time in the Love Island universe will not be long, so I'll just keep things moving and let's talk about the new Bombshell girls, who have, of course, been handpicked to satisfy each one of the boys' types. Yeah, I bet they're not complaining about double standards now. First up, I have a new Irish compatriot. She's even wearing a green bikini and everything. She's Charlene Murphy, a 27-year-old content creator. Now, I personally don't follow any influencers unless I know them from a reality TV show, so I don't know this woman, but everyone has been hyping her up due to her large following and friendship with Lucinda Strafford. And I guess I'll try not to judge her based on the company she keeps. But what the fuck is going on with all of these Murphys in this villa? I get that Murphy isn't the most uncommon surname. We have Eddie, we have Killian, but in the 12 series of Love Island before this one, we had 1 Murphy in total, and this year so far we've had 4. This is weird, and I'm predicting that we'll get at least 1 more before the end. I'm not calling it a full-blown conspiracy, but we've had more Murphys than recoupling ceremonies so far this year. Next we have Martha, who is 25 and a personal shopper from York. Now, my first thought about her was that I bet her parents have good jobs and a fantastic investment portfolio. She's bougie, beautiful girl, and growing up, I could think of no more glamorous occupation than flight attendant or personal shopper. I blame that on Rachel from Friends, so good for you, Martha, you're living the dream. Then there's Yulia, a 26-year-old insurance broker from Poland who is now living in London. And our third blonde in a row, and I'm sorry, I'm too stupid to understand what her job actually is. But Aiden is going to lose his head with this new array of women who will have to pretend to be interested in him. Okay, we have to have some brunettes now. There's Nafea, who is 22 and a student. Stunning, stunning girl, and ITV violated the Geneva Convention with the photo they took of her. What's new? They're always terrible, but that was an act of war. Next we have another beautiful blonde with Mara, a 25-year-old nursery school teacher, and sidebar, but all the ladies have been so heavy-handed with their lip liner this year. This isn't directed solely at Mara because there have been many offenders, particularly Yaz. But I want to try this out for myself because it's making me so nostalgic for the early 2000s with Gwen Stefani and Eminem's ex-wife Kim really being liberal with their lip liner application. I'll keep you posted on my journey with this. But back to Mara, and all of these girls are Gorgina, but she would be my number one. She's our Helen of Troy. Her face would launch 1,000 ships. Bellissima. Finally, we have one more brunette, Olivia, a 23-year-old marketing coordinator. She has got those beautiful Game of Thrones White Walker eyes that are really reminding me of Alexandra Daddario. Although I do wonder if we'll have a single redhead enter the villa this year. But I have seen that in Spain they're experiencing a similar heat wave to the UK, so it's probably best that they stay inside. And I'm with them. I'm plastered in Factor 50 and dressing like a beekeeper. Anyway, once the boys enter the Casa Villa, we learn that every Irish person knows each other. So of course Fitzy and Charlene are well acquainted, and I found it interesting that she finds him a lot more mellow, aka boring, and acting differently to how he does back home. Maybe it's just me, but I'm not always 100% sold on his married man act. It feels a little bit performative at times. All the boys are very excited though, and seeing the lads on tour bullshit makes me sick every year. I don't need to see Cavan pretending the alcohol-free Prosecco was his dick and spraying everyone like it's the Grand Prix. But I do need to apologise to him for consistently saying his name wrong every week. That's my bad. Straight off the bat, Cavan is very drawn to Charlene. I don't get this. Not him going mad immediately. I knew that was bound to happen, and he was pushing for that break with Jasmine, so he'd have an excuse for his Casa behaviour. He's too insecure and needs this validation. But based on what he's told us, Charlene is definitely not his type physically. And I'm saying this as someone who doesn't have a clear physical type and finds a wide range of people attractive. But that's not Cavan. The one area where he's inflexible is his type. Maybe this will change as he matures, but currently he's got a singular focus and it's brunettes. Although, I guess I'm not shocked that he likes the fellow Murphy. If I get married, I wouldn't consider changing my name. I like it and I hate paperwork, but I guess Charlene in the scenario wouldn't have that issue. And despite 23andMe having gone out of business for stealing all our data, it wouldn't hurt for them to take some DNA test to figure out that they're hopefully very distant cousins. Over to the main villa, and we see Angelisa talking to Aaron, and yeah, she doesn't seem interested. When Simba entered the villa, we really saw her energy rev up, but she looked half asleep talking to this guy. I guess I did see a little bit more of a spark from her when she was talking to Carlos, and I think she's liking more of that cheeky, chappy, bad boy energy. That's her type. Although, honestly, and this isn't completely a dig at the boy bombshells, I don't see many of the ladies shifting. I was most interested to see if there's any potential at all for Priya, because she's basically single, and I've been trying my best to remain hopeful for her. It's clear from the start, though, that Yaz would be recoupling with the Murphy-looking guy. She can't be handling the instability of being paired with Lorenzo. That stress isn't good for her, and I really related to her constantly playing with her hair in response to the overstimulation of the Casa experience. Okay, it's time for a little game of two truths and a lie. My least favourite icebreaker at work. But at least here there's slightly more interesting truths than not being able to ride a bike. This game is just for the boys in the Casa Villa, and I'm disappointed that this wasn't given to the girls too, because they always need some more encouragement to explore. First up, we have Aiden, whose statements are he used to play for Tottenham, he's had sex on a train, and he slept with his best friend's mum. Christ on a bike. Oh, Kent, you're meant to be the Garden of England. What is happening here? I love that all of the women already look disgusted with him and his desperation. He's the easiest ticket into the villa, and the bombshells still want to investigate any other available option. At least we learn that he hasn't slept with his best friend's mum. It's good to know where he draws a line in the sand, but we still had to witness Olivia kissing both brothers back to back. Most of the statements here are pretty boring and revolve around unusual places people have had sex, but it's worth noting that Fitzy is just giving the girls closed mouth pecks as part of this game. Lame, and he better marry Lola after constantly killing the vibe. At least everyone else is making up for him and ramming their tongues at as many of the bombshells as possible. We also learn that Cavan has a twin sister, and I pray to Cher and all that is holy, she better not enter this house as a bombshell. I've reached my Murphy limit. I can't do it anymore. Now, naturally, all of Lorenzo's statements are insane. Either he's been a hand model, he got kicked out of a girl's bed because he thought she was trying to baby trap him, and he had sex on a plane. The lie was the plane, and this man-child is a mess. Back to the main villa, and Carlos tells Priya that she's his number one priority. Ugh, I needed him to be genuine, because my one Casa wish was that she'd find someone just a little bit more tolerable than the previous guys she's been coupled up with, and that she managed to stay out of any more love triangles. Unless it's her with two guys, I'm all for that, she's earned that. But I don't trust him. He's told both Priya and Angie that he's talked about them with his mum and she really likes them. I have to wonder if this move typically works for him, because I think there's nothing less sexy than someone discussing their parents in their first flirty conversation. But I guess all these people are very young and still live at home. With the main filler, I'm already disappointed in the number of girls that are completely checked out and already acting like military wives, missing their husbands while they're deployed. We've got Ellie, Angie, Lola, and Jasmine all pretty closed off. Oh, I really needed Jasmine to start moving because Cavan is ready to pull the infamous Ross Geller line. We were on a break. Wake up, ladies. Look alive. With that, shall we move ahead to Monday's episode, continuing our time in Casa. So we open on the boys not giving two fucks about any of the original girls. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want everybody to stay loyal. I need people to be messy, but every single one of them is really going for it. And I feared that they'd all recouple with a Casa girl, with the exception of Fitzy. This is hard to stomach, and these men are for the streets, especially when I have to witness the girls staying abstinent and acting like they've been torn apart from their soulmate. Every single one of these boys, bar Fitzy, shared a bed with a Casa girl, while all of the ladies, apart from Yaz and Priya, slept solo. And personally, I don't really get the big issue with this bed thing. I wouldn't have an issue with someone sharing a bed, as long as they kept their hands to themselves. There is no way in hell I would be lying outside getting bitten by mosquitoes for any of those fuckheads. Okay, I need to talk about the Murphy couple of Cavan and Charlene. And I know all of the mama bears online like to infantilize him and want to protect him from big bad Jasmine, but I'm starting to consider him to be the most calculated of all the boys here. I didn't pick up on it at first because he's a bit more discreet and less obvious in his manipulations than Aiden. Every year, Casa falls around the same time, and this guy has definitely planned this break from Jasmine to get a whole pass to do whatever he wants, and I can't be convinced otherwise. There's no coincidences in Love Island, and I now fear that in the next few years, the rest of the fuckboys will be using his rulebook. He's overtaken Liam as their Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anyway, he thinks they're the perfect match because they have the same surname, and, well, I guess it worked for all the inbreds in the royal family. And he's happy that she's met her future brother-in-law, who she's also swapped spit with. Ugh, these people. This is a blessing in disguise, Jasmine. I'm sorry, but the guy isn't even hot. He's getting overhyped because he looks a lot better when he's put next to Aiden. I had to say it. Next, we have Lorenzo with his kindred spirit, Yulia. These two are made for each other, and I appreciate her for all the shit she throws at him. This man should forever be getting roasted, and he's loving it. She has him cracking up, and I would happily watch these two interact all day. Say that I'm really loving the personalities of the Casa girls. I'm not as interested in Charlene or Olivia, but they both seem like perfectly nice girls. Just not the most dynamic personality-wise, but with Yulia, I love how unimpressed she is with him, and I think she can keep him grounded. I definitely think they make more sense than him and Yasmin, and I wouldn't be surprised if they end up in the final four together. Then we have Simba, and if I had to pick the one guy who would end up in a Casa love triangle, it would be him. He is juggling both Mara and Nafia with such grace and really digging deep with questions such as, do you give Big Mama? The man's a mess and incredible television. Also, I have to say, in my head, my nickname for Nafia is Erwan, because the name of that overpriced movie monger is an anagram of nowhere, and I still can't believe that her name is actually Heaven spelled backwards. Every single year on the show, I am discovering a plethora of new names, but I will say that he and Mara match each other's energies a lot more than him and Angie do. And Nafia is getting ready to start a union for the Casa girls so they don't just get used like disposable playthings. She's pissed off about him saying that she put him off by bringing up Angie in bed and because he kissed Mara in the pool. Now, her reaction did seem a little bit over the top, but he really got a free pass from Angie for all of his madness, so fair play, Nafia. You dish out the energy that Angelista should have given him weeks ago. He had it coming. Alright, let's talk about the absolute sleaze that is Aiden. He is yet again begging women for kisses, and even these poor Casa bombshells who want to secure their place in the villa can't bring themselves to go through with it. He is the lowest hanging fruit for them, but they'd rather explore every other avenue before having to degrade themselves and accept his slobbery advances. I really respect Martha for holding strong, and there's really few things that are less attractive than desperation. Her initiating a kiss with Samraj while Aiden has to watch was cinema. I was getting scared that Priya was going to end up lumbered with him because they have zero other options. With him, I get it, but I'm clearly missing something with Priya. Let's move ahead to the main villa. We have another potential triangle involving Priya and Jasmine, but this time with Jordan, who apparently has a girlfriend at home. Jasmine tells him that he's her type, but she just doesn't seem interested, and I think she just wants to keep him on the hook as a safety net to protect her when Cav inevitably fucks up. Honestly, the only couple I think that has any potential in this main villa is Yaz and Tommy 2.0. And I really think he is what she's been looking for the whole time. He's the secret Murphy relation who got all the nutrients in the womb and has fortunately not yet planned a trip to Turkey for some veneers. Or possibly he's gone for a more subtle version than Cavan and Aiden's dentures. I'm turning a bit tooth blind when watching the show. I can generally only tell things are fake when it is incredibly obvious. I'm the same way with wigs and hair extensions, so it's really not good that I noticed what's going on with Ellie's hair. I'm usually oblivious to that shit, and speaking of Ellie, I'm shocked that she has zero interest in him or any of the other men in this villa. I guess she's been burned one too many times already, but I just didn't realise that things were getting so serious between her and Finley so soon. We close this episode with the head-to-head Don't Bottle It challenge between Casa and the main villa. Now, there were a few things that I liked about the format of this challenge. Number 1, that giant spinning ball. I love a prop. Number 2, in the text of both villas, they've made it clear who was doing each challenge. And number 3, that it's based on how hard you go for it rather than speed. Because in the past, I've been worried about some people getting whiplash when they're getting really quickly grabbed for snogs during this game. My biggest takeaway from this challenge is that I'm happy that Lola and Fitzy actually participated. She kind of half-arses it, but with Fitzy, man, the menace that this man could have been if he wasn't so busy cosplaying this whole series as a local ficker. Ugh, such wasted potential. That shirtless freeway kiss. Whew, that guy fucks. I haven't found him even the tiniest bit sexual since day one, but seeing him like this annoyed me even more. This is a sliding doors moment, but in an alternative timeline when he could be his genuine fuckboy self, we could have had a much more interesting series. However, the winners of the challenge and somehow receiving a cocktail party are the main villa. I'll allow it because I just want to see the girls have fun for once, but they could have at least given them alcohol. I don't even drink, and I'm judging everyone for doing all of this for juice. Alright, let's move on to our next Casa episode, and I don't know whether it's a case of the format being overplayed or just how depressing the experience is for the girls versus the guys, but I honestly haven't really been enjoying these episodes that much, and I found them dragging on a bit. I remember in previous years, it was such a shock when a boy pulled a complete 180 and ended up kissing someone else. But these days, almost all of them are kissing someone outside of a challenge, and with this group, it honestly didn't shock me. The only person I was hoping would actually go berserk is Fitzy, but I knew deep down that he was a lost cause. Alright, first, I need Jasmine and Priya to cut out these middlemen who aren't good enough for either of them and just fall in love with each other. Out of her options, Priya seems to be the most interested in Jordan because he seems a bit more mature. Bless her. I naively hoped that Casa would be a fun experience for her, but she's been lumbered with dorks who don't even seem interested in her anyway. Personally, I think Carlos is a lot more attractive than Jordan, but I know these women inevitably end up drawn to the most boring men as long as they're over 6'3". These men are literally saying that on the outside, they wouldn't even be arsed to be an option. Christ, even this lot is very low effort. I get that most of the ladies are a waste of time, but Priya is basically single. If this is the state of the current dating scene, then let's all just enjoy our spinsterhood. Meanwhile, Jasmine is still completely interested in Cavan, but she thinks it'll be a win-win if Priya is interested in Jordan. Because if Priya couples up with him, then Jasmine can also use it as an opportunity to get to know him better. Now, I have a bone to pick with Jasmine here. Jordan tells her that his head is with her and that he's not really attracted to Priya. Then, of course, when Priya talks to him, he just lies and acts like he's interested in both of them. As Priya's number one frenemy, Jasmine should have told her about that conversation instead of selfishly encouraging her to pursue this connection for her own benefit. The audacity of her pushing this on Priya just so she has more options. Absolute madness. But Priya girl, what are you doing? Carlos has already communicated this to you and Ellie heard it as well. I hated seeing her settle for scraps. Apparently, she had more of a thing with that guy who got sent home, so maybe that's causing her to scramble. But this is some bullshit, and I genuinely don't know how she hasn't walked yet. Also in the main villa, Yasmin does share a kiss with Tommy 2.0, but it's nothing to write home about. She's trying to keep things respectful until she's spoken to Lorenzo. And I find basically all of the kisses on the show disgusting. But there's something in particular about the way that both Aiden and Yaz kiss that really grosses me out. And I'm sorry to you, girl, because I was initially putting all of the blame for their disgusting kisses on Aiden. But yeah, I think they're both at fault here. But I'm happy for her. In my opinion, this guy is her endgame on the show. She's found what she's looking for. And I pray she never has to go back to Aiden and listen to him call her Ellie again. Meanwhile, over in the Casa Villa of Sin, Aiden finally gets a kiss with Marfa after acting like he's all deep and misunderstood, and that his silly persona is just a protection mechanism. Whatever, and I don't think Marfa was buying it either, but she has to secure her place in the villa. I'll allow it though, because she definitely earns it later in the episode during the Secret Snaps mission. I'll get to that, but first, our beautiful butterfly Lorenzo has also been going through his own personal growth journey. Well, according to him, I still predict he'll be single within 2 weeks of leaving the villa, but despite my bias towards the fantasy relationship between him and Jasmine, I actually think Julia could be the only connection he has here with any real potential. They bounce off each other well, and I could genuinely see them dragging this relationship out for at least a few more weeks until the final. Then we have Kevin and Charlene. Maybe I'm being a bit melodramatic, but I feel like we've seen his mask slip a little. He asks her where she's been for the past 4 weeks, and we already know from original Tommy's interviews that everyone and their uncle knew she was entering the villa. I'm starting to actually think she does fit Kevin's type after all. He definitely seems drawn towards the girls with the biggest follower counts. When asking his big brother for advice, Aiden is fully aboard the Charlene train. He thinks she's definitely the better choice for him and would be a much better fit for his life outside the villa. Yeah, based on what I'm seeing, I actually agree, and I'd be worried about the kind of welcome Jasmine would receive from the Murphys. Now, I don't think you can judge people purely based on their family, and they aren't always going to play a huge role in your relationship. But I do think that's the case with this very tight-knit family. Don't Kevin and Aiden still live together? Yeah, I don't mean to be harsh, but I'd rather marry into the Soprano family. At least with them, you'll be served some delicious baked CD. Anyway, Aiden is delighted because he gets to see his brother having fun again, and apparently he can finally see his teeth. Bitch please, the only things Katy Perry could see from space were the Great Wall of China and Kevin's teeth. Then we have Simba still navigating his Casa love triangle while Angie is patiently waiting for him back home. We already know this man loves sharing a bed with a woman in order to gain clarity, so tonight he's doing another switcheroo with the sleeping arrangements. He has to talk to Samraj about stealing Mara and then somehow let Nafia down gently. Except Nafia is, once again, having absolutely none of his shit. There's no way she's getting kicked out of his bed, and she's completely done with him. Honestly, I've never seen this much conflict within the confines of a Casa Amor pairing. I'm sorry, Nafia, but if you're looking for a one-woman man, then you're definitely barking up the wrong tree. I do respect how she continually drags him, laughs in his face, and calls him out for his complete lack of accountability. She wants that screen time, and I want women who yell at men, so I think the producers need to bring her back as an OG next year, or at the very least, give her an all-star spot. Alright, so yet again, we close the episode with the one thing that everyone actually wanted to watch. This time, it's the secret selfie challenge. Man, if I wasn't a sicko who has the need to complete everything, and if I wasn't doing this podcast, I would genuinely only watch the first 10 and last 10 minutes of each episode. Now, don't get me wrong, it's Love Island, so even when it's a bit shit, I still have a lovely time putting my brain on airplane mode, but this season definitely isn't making it into my Hall of Fame. Let's just say that. Anyway, in a new twist, and I appreciate the effort ITV, the cast of Bombshell Girls have to create their own version of the postcard. They need to be very stealthy and snap pictures of whichever boy best fits each statement. Well, apart from Fitzy, who was AWOL for this whole episode, I hope the catering didn't give him diarrhea, but he was nowhere to be seen. My MVP award has to go to Miss Martha for catching that picture of Kevin and Charlene kissing for the statement, the boy who's been the easiest to turn. Bravo. Where have you been for the past 4 weeks, Martha? Thank you for your service. The only other worthwhile picture was the selfie Julia takes of her and Lorenzo kissing. You don't even need to be discreet with that airhead, so thank you, Lorenzo, for making their job even easier. But shame on the ladies for capturing a picture of Simba rubbing sunscreen on Mara's back and not bothering to replace it with a picture of him eating her face seconds later. Dishonor on your cows, dishonor on your families. I'm sure Angie would have probably still coupled up with him, but you have to at least try. The episode ends with the OG girls receiving the pictures, and thank God, we needed something to happen here. It's a TV show, so I understand that every year we unfortunately need 1 or 2 people to become the Casa victims. But it's criminal that 4 of the girls are absolute mugs, lying back, working on their tans, just being friends with the Casa boys while remaining completely oblivious to how little courtesy their own guys have for them. This is a disgrace. Although I found it incredibly stressful watching them grabbing and running around with the one phone. I've been the widow of many mobile phones over the year, so I couldn't handle watching another casualty. Next year, can we just send the pictures to all of their phones, or at least give them an iPad? I died when they used one of the other phones to zoom in so they could see what Simba was doing in the background of a photo. Women in STEM. And their roast of Lorenzo will go down in history. The one thing he definitely has going for him is his looks. But in that picture, he genuinely looked like an elderly man enjoying his saga cruise. It just wasn't his angle, and it happens to the best of us. Then the final gut punch is Jasmine seeing the picture of Cavan kissing Charlene. I needed her to know this so she could act accordingly, and my final thought in this episode is that this edit has really been letting us down with the OG girls. We actually got to see their personalities shine while reacting to these horrific pictures. Give us more of that. I'm sorry, the boys are flops, and I'd generally rather watch the girls interacting with each other. Okay, let's talk about Wednesday's episode and the end of Casa Amor. And thank you, production, for actually giving us the full recoupling in this episode. I was going to take to the streets and riot if they'd ended the episode after the Lola and Fitzy reunion. Anyway, we opened things up in the main filler with the OG ladies still reeling from the selfies they received from the Casa bombshell girls. Everyone is rallying around Jasmine, and I imagine that the producers were hoping that seeing the hard, cold, indisputable truth would lead her to actually giving things a go with Jordan or one of the other Casa boys. But she's not here to fake it, and she doesn't want any of them. And I have to say, I can understand her thinking as someone who is incredibly petty. She needs to maintain that moral high ground. There is a double standard, and she will be judged more harshly and turned into the villain by Aiden if she decides to couple up with someone else. It's just not worth it to pick one of these, I'm sorry, but meh men that nobody wants besides Yaz. Doing that would absolve Calv of all of his bullshit, and I'm not buying for 1 second that she fancies Jordan or anyone else. I can't comprehend it, but she's a lover girl and is all in on Cavan. Even Lorenzo, I think she finds him attractive and likes the attention, but she's never taken him or that relationship as seriously as she does with Cav. So, as much as I would like to see what something between her and Lorenzo would be like, my gut tells me that she'll either reconcile with Cav, or she'll be happy with the screen time she got and go home to Influence. But she's crying, and all of these girls are acting like they've been personally victimized. I'm shocked that they think so highly of any of these guys. If we've learned anything from past years, it's that all of these men treat that experience like they're sex tourists. I'm starting to understand all those straight women who get nervous when their man goes on a stag do or a lad's holiday. Ladies, you need to get yourselves a man who doesn't go outside. That's my advice. Poor Angie is devastated and tearing up because Simba is being exactly who she has known him to be. I hate seeing someone hit their breaking point, and I just wish that instead of Jasmine getting the kissing photo, Angie could have been the one to receive it. Her, Ellie, and Priya have just been served shit sandwich after shit sandwich. I really don't know how she or Priya are still hanging on. This year's show just isn't the best advertisement for people considering applying. Honestly, those Royal Navy recruitment ads that fill every ad break are much more appealing. With Angie, I think letting her know in advance would have been more humane than her finding out during the recoupling ceremony. Just let her leave on her own terms without all the drama, and hopefully she'd end up on a separate flight from that Casa boy who was allegedly involved in some kind of way with a stabbing incident. Well, at least Yaz is fully enjoying Casa for the girls. Even the single one Priya is sleeping alone at night. So seeing the selfie of Lorenzo has given Yaz the green light to hard launch her relationship with the latest iteration of Murphy Man. They even have a very tongue-forward kiss. Now, I once heard someone say that white British men have one of 6 different faces. And based on this series of Love Island, I think that was actually being very generous. But Yaz has a type, so I'm happy for her. To me, though, they all just look like much less fit versions of Duncan James from Blue. Let's head over to the Casa Villa, and I must say that like Aaron Samuels, Julia looks stunning with her hair pushed back. Things are going well between her and Lorenzo, and I like seeing their back and forth, but I'm still not sure if I'm actually seeing any chemistry. Meanwhile, Marfa, my bisexual queen, is working harder than a coal miner for her place in the villa, engaging in so many kisses with Aiden. God bless her, give her the 50k now. And Simba has at least downsized his Casa love triangle into just a line between him and Mara. He claims he wants to establish some boundaries, not kissing or touching so things don't get misconstrued. Sir, it's a little late for that now. The damage has been done, and it's nice to see that even he doesn't believe his own bullshit, because not 2 seconds later, he's smashing his face up against Mara. To be fair, I think he only meant those rules once they got into bed, but he's clearly starting to fear the repercussions of his actions once he's reunited with Angie. And he should be afraid, because it's finally time for the recoupling and the end of Casa Amor. Hallelujah! Maya has risen and she's looking sensational in some Morticia Adams looking outfit. Summerween has officially begun, and I'm just going to go couple by couple. We get things started with the friendship couple, Priya and Aiden. Priya decides to couple up with Jordan, and what are you even doing here, Bambi? She must really hate Carlos's guts to choose a man who is clearly a lot more interested in Jasmine, and she knows this. It's baffling. But I guess she had to pick the one guy she had the teensiest bit of interest in. Honestly, I'm sorry to see the back of Carlos. Obviously, things wouldn't have worked out between him and Priya, but he's clearly a messy bitch and could have joined forces with Simba. Ugh, this is why we can't have nice things. We also get our first taste of this new recoupling quirk with the guys walking out separately from the girl they've selected, which is clearly in response to the A++ detective work pulled by Meg last year, who could immediately detect any heel walking in her vicinity and alert the girls before they were faced with their boy. Honestly, Lola has nothing on her. As for Aiden, he's such a wild card that after getting his kisses in Casa, I genuinely thought he'd pulled a mad one and was about to try rekindling things with Yaz. But alas, he's picked Marfa, another woman ridiculously out of his league. Moving on to Mika and Samraj, I will forever remain mad that they couldn't find a guy who was actually her type to put into Casa. I believe in my heart 100% that if she'd been given a decent option, she would have been moving mad. But now that she hasn't realised her fuck girl potential, I have zero interest in her and Samraj, and honestly find them to be furniture. At least Marfa, the girl Samraj kissed in Casa, is now coupled up with Aiden, so maybe we could get some potential drama there. In the end though, they both choose to stick with each other and have a very chaste reunion. There is no passion here whatsoever, and my brain was completely laser focused on how hot Samraj is looking with the beard. It's an absolute game changer for him. He's always gorgeous, but he's genuinely never looked better. After that, we have Yaz and Lorenzo. It was actually nice to see both of them recouple and finally jump off the sinking ship of their doomed relationship. I can genuinely see these two becoming one of those civilized divorced couples who still get on brilliantly and own a timeshare together. Although, of course, Lorenzo still wants to keep Yaz around as one more option to juggle. This man thinks he's the Teletubby sun baby and that all the girls should continuously orbit around him. He will never be satisfied. Meanwhile, Yaz is basically ready to start picking out floral arrangements for her wedding with Tommy 2.0. And dear Lord, I have to say this show is becoming a parody of itself, playing a gloomy version of Living La Vida Loca that would make the perfect soundtrack for a dinner with your apocalyptic cult, while Julia walks out looking like she's fresh from the spring-summer 1991 Calvin Klein runway show. From there, it's over to Lola and Sean. I guess this is meant to be our big emotional reunion moment. Obviously, they both choose to stay loyal to each other, and I'm sorry, I'm fresh out of fucks to give. I'm happy they found each other, but my cold, jaded heart felt absolutely nothing watching this, so let's keep it moving. That brings us to the Casa recoupling everyone was waiting for, Jasmine and Kevin. I was actually surprised, because I definitely thought production would save them until the very end. Jasmine decides to stick with Kevin, but as we all knew he would, he decides to switch over to our new Irish representative, Charlene. And I'm sorry, but I've been really let down by the Irish contestants this year. Normally I can always rely on them to bring some drama, but they've all been absolute drags. I guess Victoria was probably my favourite, but even she was very mellow. I'm also glad Maya basically told Aiden to butt the fuck out. This is the problem when you turn the show into a family drama. The girls can't even express a single feeling about this without him instantly trying to shut them down and telling them to chill. Compared to season 5, this is basically a tea party. These women are being incredibly non-confrontational, and Jasmine is actually handling this pretty calmly, which I think is smart, because the second that she shows even an ounce of anger, Aiden and the rest of the boys are just going to try and twist things to turn her into the villain. I also hate it when the guys try to protect themselves by saying they'll discuss things later. You've just humiliated Jasmine in front of the whole group. You spent the last few days attached to Charlene's mouth, in full view of all the boys, but now you want privacy and respect. Fuck off. This is national television. We've all seen the tapes. Own it. Our penultimate recoupling is between Ellie and Finley. They both decide to stay loyal despite some flirtation between him and one of the two Casa brunettes. You know what, maybe this was meant to be our emotional reunion. They haven't been together that long, so I'm not overly invested, but we've learned that Ellie is the most popular girl in the villa, so perhaps the nation is pinning all of their romantic hopes on these two surviving. Finally, we get to Angelista and Simba. Angie, of course, decides to stick with Simba, and she already knows that being saved until the end is never a good sign. But it is genuinely devastating to watch her have that brief moment of hope when Simba walks back in alone, only for Mara to appear moments later. Ugh, it was tough. And unfortunately, that's where the episode leaves us, with all of the fallout saved for the following night. At least production finally gave us a complete Casa recoupling instead of another unnecessary cliffhanger. I'll take the small win. Alright, let's start Thursday's episode on a positive note. Mara looks stunning, and I loved Ellie's teardrop ruining her makeup. That looked like art. But otherwise, how many blows is Angie going to take? Simba is full of shit, but he is a reality star. He starts rambling on about how this has been his self-development journey and growth. Oh, I love how all the soul searching in this show boils down to learning to be selfish and finding enlightenment through mouth-to-mouth contact with as many bombshells as possible. Thank you, Love Island. It's very educational and has saved me from wasting pennies on self-help books. Angie just seems depleted, so I appreciated Mika, Jasmine, and Priya really stepping up and going at that boy on her behalf. Then it's time to hear some sweet parting words from the rejected Casa bombshells. Well, I mean, what can the guys even say? Nobody was entertaining them. But with the girls, Olivia drops the bomb on her instant connection with Finley. To be fair to him, he's been with Ellie for like 2 days, so I think it's reasonable that he got to know other people, and I don't recall him doing anything majorly disrespectful, so their situation seems entirely recoverable. But Nafia, who of course isn't going to leave this show without making a few more clippable moments for socials, says that Simba was disrespectful to her and fair. I'll let her, again, give him the dragging that he deserved from Angie, and all I'll say on this is that it's a shame things ended between him and Tommy in the way that they did. They're clearly kindred spirits, and when trying to explain the situation with Nafia, he casually mentioned Samraj sharing a bed with Mara. I don't even care. More villagers need to be like Simba. Maya then tells the boys about the Casa Girls challenge to snap some pictures of them in compromising positions, and I just know how these men operate, so I don't want to see them try to push all the blame on the bombshells and acting like they betrayed them when it's their actions that are the problem. I'm starting to think that the main villa is haunted. Even the Casa bombshells are instantly miserable once they're in here. I don't even know what's going on with Charlene. Maybe she's just a bit of a drip, and fair enough, some people's emotional reaction is to cry all the time. She's entitled to have her feelings, and I'm entitled to not care that she's seemingly been crying non-stop for at least an hour. I just don't understand what they're talking about when Julia is calling Jasmine a bitch and saying that she was so rude, because honestly, I was disappointed at how mild a reaction she gave, and all of her energy was directed squarely at Cavan. Everyone needs to get a grip, and I would prefer to see their rage directed at the guys instead, but I'm a terrible person, and I'm happy as long as someone is fighting. At least Angie and Jasmine have each other and can form a Casa Victims Brigade, and I've never seen someone flip as quickly as Simba. He's immediately chasing after Angie and doing his dramatic pacing while muttering, fuck. I do wonder how much sway production had in him bringing back Mara. It did seem like he wasn't going to do it last night, but I reckon he's a producer's pet and is willing to do anything to get screen time. I just need Angie to listen to Mika and not take that man back. Please, I am begging her to stand on business just once. This is embarrassing. I agree with her that this is the end of her journey, and I don't trust production to bring in someone decent for her. She's clearly not one of their priorities, and I just can't deal with these boys and their object permanence. I really respected Kai, who has now married Sanam, for standing firm on his decision to choose her in the Casa recoupling. All of these men instantly fold once they're back in the main villa and start to backpedal on everything they've told those girls in Casa. So I get why Mara and Charlene felt insecure once the guys started showing regrets, but I just don't understand Julia blaming this on Jasmine and saying that her behaviour is the exact reason why he needed a break from her. Can anyone hold this guy accountable for his actions? I'm really starting to think that Julia is Lorenzo's twin flame. They both display some underlying misogyny and have both called Jasmine a bitch now. Even Cavan recognises that he didn't handle things in the best or most respectful way, and that all of the guys dealt with the situation so differently than the ladies, and that they were wrong for their actions. So maybe he is evolving despite all of Aiden's attempts to pull him into the gutter. Man, that guy should just be thankful that he is one of the non-offenders this evening, and that's only because none of the OG women had any interest in him. I can guarantee that if he'd still been coupled with Yasmin, his actions would have been exactly the same in Casa. Now, in terms of Jasmine and Cavan, he clearly is having second thoughts, and I'm growing skeptical of how firm she'll stand on being done with him. I know she gave that whole bad bitch grown woman TikTok seminar to the rest of the ladies, but I've seen every episode ever of this show, so sadly I've seen many baddies before Jasmine fold after the necessary 2-day grovelling period. When they have a sit down, things remain very cold, but I guess civil. She tells him how she loves so many things about herself, and he of course doesn't want things to be over between them, but he can't be perfect all the time. I rolled my eyes right with Jasmine on that, but at least they both still have very high opinions of themselves. Over to Lola and Fitzy, and despite still harbouring a resentment for women with small feet, they managed to move on pretty quickly from his freeway kiss in the challenge. Which doesn't shock me, because Lola is another one of the ladies who has this undercurrent of misogyny and seems to place a lot of the blame on the women versus the men. I've always looked at her a bit funny ever since she saved Tommy, and also I don't recall ever hearing before that Yulia had an interest in Fitzy. I'm very interested to see how this will play out with them, because I swear we haven't seen either of them even try to explore anything else since about day 2 or 3. But when she hears about Yulia flirting with him a lot in Casa, she's calling her a fucking bitch. And yeah, that tracks for Lola. I've always felt that a lot of her issues with Priya stemmed from her actually giving Fitzy more than just a peck in that blindfolded kissing competition. Next we see a chat between Mika and Samraj, and I'm just not buying anything she's telling us about feeling giddy with him. Have we even seen those two properly kiss since their first one, which resulted in her ending things with him? I don't even buy that these two are friends. I've just never seen two such disconnected people. He spills to her about all of his indiscretions in Casa, and she is looking like a woman scorned. Maybe it's just because she's 21 and wants to be a wronged woman to fit in with her single and therefore vulnerable friends. This is all becoming a bit too much for her, and she starts to cry, and I guess this makes more sense than whatever's going on with Charlene, but she's young and this villa is possessed by the ghost of Amy Hart's tears, so maybe I just need to get more in touch with my emotions and accept everyone having a breakdown this evening. I do imagine the environment is very overwhelming. Later that evening, Simba finally gets his chance to chat with Angelista, and we need to get this man an apprentice. The way that he can sell such complete and utter bollocks with a straight face. Wow. Some of his monologues should be added to the GCSE drama curriculum. Bringing out the third person tense to tell her, I just want to be the best version of Simba for you. His level of audaciousness is unparalleled. This was definitely the most riled I've ever seen Angie. He has pushed her to her limits. Saying that, she was still pretty calm and level-headed, but I reckon this was at least a 9 out of 10 in the Angelista rage scale. He's telling her how he told Mara in bed that he can't do this anymore. This boy is living on another planet. You've already brought her back into the villa. At least he's unlocked Angie's future career path as a silent movie star. Her expressive eyes were telling me a whole story throughout this episode. She says that she's ready to pack her bags, and he says that if she goes, he'll go. I needed her to call his bluff, because the only thing that man loves is being on camera. No way is he leaving the show for her, and sorry, but I will welcome him back with open arms when it's time for All Stars. Then we see our new resident Tiny Tears, Charlene, refilling the Irish Sea. I don't mean to be rude, but is this what happens when your parents love you too much and constantly tell you how great you are? I'm probably projecting as someone with old school parents who called me big nose. I have my own issues, but I just can't comprehend the level of entitlement and victimhood coming from both her and Martha. Jasmine was barely mad and everything was directed towards the men. Why are you whining about the OG girls being cold and not giving you a warm enough welcome? Several of them are having breakdowns about the demise of their relationships, so they'll probably make you more of a priority tomorrow. And a few of them, like Yasmin, were really warm towards you. Yes, she may have been trying to enlist them in a pyramid scheme, but even she said they weren't receptive. Also, they're hardly segregated on this island. There's 4 Casa girls in the villa. If you have more members than Destiny's Child, you can survive and keep on surviving. These 2 are 25 and 27. You have fully formed frontal lobes. Please learn to read a room. How dare you make the Murphy brothers sound like the voice of reason? That's madness. Alright, I need to calm down and hocus pocus switch my focus to Ellie and Finley. Now, I can even forgive all of his Casa actions, but I cannot tolerate him sitting through a conversation with Ellie and not warning her about the tear stains cutting through all of her poorly applied foundation. God bless her. When she watches this back, I will completely understand her going no contact with him and all of the girls for letting her appear on television like that. I get that there's a lot going on, but does she really not have a mirror in one of the bags she's always toting around? Alright, the final thing I want to cover from Thursday's episode is the conversation between Mara and Simba. I love this woman, and I really hope we get to see more of her because her reactions to Simba were cracking me up. And I get it, what do you even do in the face of an absolute clown? He's ridiculous, and telling her how he said to Angie that he'll leave if she's leaving. She's just no nonsense and gets straight to it. It's clear that he's making a decision with that statement, and he wouldn't leave if Mara was the one to go. And let's be honest, there's 0 chance of him actually leaving for Angie either, but she's wasting her breath being logical with this Rumpelstiltskin man who tries to explain everything away in a riddle. Okay, let's finish things off with Friday's episode, and in the words of Ain Sterling, the Casa chaos continues. I just don't like how things have turned out for Angie and Jasmine, but I do love how this experience has bonded them, and I'm so glad the editors have finally decided to let us see a bit more of Angie's personality. This show is wild when you think about it. Imagine your guy getting with someone else, then having to go downstairs the next morning and say good morning to them. I completely understand where they're coming from. You really have to wallow in your loserness. And then you have to deal with incredibly stupid shit like Finley being forced to act as Piggy in the middle, delivering a cup of peppermint tea from Simba to Angie. Don't drag the little Welsh boy into your bullshit, Simba. Like fuck did that tea come from a good place. It was performative as hell. So this episode is basically one long series of conversations between the newly formed love triangles, squares, and potentially even pentagons. Let's start with Yasmin, Lorenzo, Yulia, and Tommy. Now, despite her dodgy business practices, I really respect Yaz for putting an end to things with Lorenzo and focusing all of her attention on Tommy 2.0. But on a fundamental level, this has broken Lorenzo. His little mind just cannot comprehend somebody rejecting him, and his fragile ego is absolutely not coping with Yaz being fresh out of fucks to give. Also, what is he on? In no way were her words full of venom. To my ears, she just sounded incredibly bored of dealing with him, and honestly, I'm with her. In the words of my queen, Judge Judy, beauty fades, dumb as forever. Now onto the Murphy couple, Kevin and Charlene. Thankfully, Charlene has stopped crying today and is actually being incredibly understanding about how Jasmine is feeling. Meanwhile, Jasmine is still really hurt because she trusted Kevin and never expected him to move mad, even if they were technically on a break. More than anything, she's hurt that he's downplaying how deep their connection really was. And this man is going to end up with one of those no ragrats tattoos because he keeps telling everyone he doesn't regret any of his actions. But his mopey, basil brush looking face is telling a very different story. Eventually, Jasmine and Kevin sit down to talk. He tells her he doesn't want them to be over, that he'll fight for her, and that she's still his priority. But at the same time, he also wants to continue getting to know Charlene. And if there's one thing we know about Jasmine, it's that she is not settling for a love triangle. That's why her and Lorenzo were instantly doomed. And it's one of the biggest problems with putting someone with her personality on Love Island. She is so attractive that outside this villa, I imagine she's used to having someone's full devoted attention. So it makes complete sense that she has those standards, and honestly, she should. She should know her worth. The problem is that none of the boys we've seen this season are capable of meeting her standards. For her sake, I need Jasmine to stop looking for a husband in here. None of these men are serious, and she just needs to have fun for the summer because not one of them is good enough for her. What I did appreciate about their conversation is that it finally got to the root of why she's so hurt. After all those compatibility chats, after constantly talking about their age difference, he goes into Casa and picks another 27-year-old woman. So now Jasmine must be thinking, maybe my age was never the issue. Maybe it was just me. And then we find out that they'd actually been very intimate in bed before Casa. I had no idea and don't really know fully what that means, but learning that makes it much easier to understand why she's struggling to move on. After that, Cavan has a chat with Charlene, and honestly, this must be emotional whiplash for her. They've barely spoken in the 24 hours since returning to the villa. I'm completely with her because I genuinely don't understand why he even brought her back. Now that he's reunited with Jasmine, it's suddenly Charlene who. It's honestly scary how quickly someone can do a 180. The second he got back into the villa, he was dropping her hand while they were dancing. Champagne problems. This boy doesn't know his own mind or what he actually wants, and at this point, I genuinely don't know where either Charlene or Mara can even go from here. I do want to briefly touch on the Samraj, Mika and Martha situation, although I'd really like to exclude Samraj from the narrative entirely. I'm bored to tears listening to everyone dissect whether his kiss with Martha meant anything or whether he was pulling her for flirty chats. Talk to me when you've licked someone's tit. I couldn't care less about this group. Honestly, I felt more chemistry between Mika and Martha than I've ever seen between Mika and Samraj. Maybe I'm imagining it because they're both ridiculously beautiful, and in the conversation they shared, they both remained fairly low energy, like they always do. But there generally felt like there was something more going on between them than I've ever seen between either of them and Samraj. Alright, now let's get into Angie, Simba, and Mara. First, we see Angie and Mara chatting, and I don't really know how to explain this, but Mara just makes me feel safe. She is such a calming, grounding presence, and she is clearly far too emotionally mature to get dragged into Simba's circus. This man has the weirdest boundaries I've ever seen. He acts like he was taking this huge moral stand by saying that they couldn't kiss in bed. Mate, why does that matter if you're kissing everywhere else in the villa? Make it make sense. Eventually, Simba sits down with Angie, and I am fascinated watching all of the little acting choices he makes whenever he's trying to appear remorseful. Suddenly he's sighing and wheezing like that little penguin from Toy Story, and his eyes become so sleepy, they're barely open. Honestly, he's a master of his craft. He's gone fully method. Meanwhile, Angie is exhausted. She's tired of the triangles, tired of the excuses, and tired of his behaviour, yet somehow she still manages to look far more awake than he does. Is this man okay? Somebody get him a Red Bull stat. He keeps telling her she's everything he wants, that this is the most genuine connection he's felt in years, and honestly, I can't listen to any more of his love bombing while rolling my eyes right alongside Angie. I don't get how she could ever consider taking him back. Every conversation is just introducing new red flags. Even God is probably up there rolling his eyes wondering why Simba keeps bringing him into it. Later on, Simba has another conversation with Mara, and I was honestly mesmerised watching her deal with him. She speaks to him with the exact tone you'd use for a toddler. And honestly, that's exactly how women need to handle Simba. Mara is just miles too emotionally intelligent for him, and if any of these Casa girls make it onto All Stars, I desperately hope it's her. She's an icon already, and I will absolutely be stealing "You Can Absolutely Fuck Off" hard for all future conversations. Alright, let's now get into the Lola and Yulia drama. This all starts during that ridiculous little powwow with all 11 girls in the villa. Lola is annoyed that Yulia got to know Fitzy during Casa despite knowing that he was completely closed off. I'm sorry, but I cannot with this couple anymore. If you're genuinely that secure in your relationship and you believe he's completely in love with you, then why are you still having this conversation? Love Island fulfilled its purpose for you during week 1. We're now 6 weeks deep into this and I'm fed up. Now, I don't even particularly like Yulia now that I'm seeing a bit more of her personality, but I do agree with one thing she says. Why does Fitzy keep talking about needing tests if he's supposedly entertaining absolutely nothing? Despite not really liking Yulia, she is exactly what this fella needs. This is genuinely the most entertainment Lola has provided all series, and I needed someone to knock her off that high horse. Yulia did nothing wrong. She did exactly what a Casa bombshell is supposed to do, and Lola really needs to stop acting like she's morally superior because another woman dared to have a couple of flirty chats with Fitzy and learn how to say kiss my arse in Irish. Later, when Yulia tries to smooth things over, Lola is incredibly dismissive, and honestly, this is exactly why I've never really warmed to her. She's determined to put all of the blame onto Yulia because she's such a male-centered person. None of the other OG girls are behaving like this towards the Casa girls, and the other ones actually kissed and recoupled with their men. Yet Lola is trying to slap Julia with a scarlet letter over a couple of harmless conversations. Ugh, Jesus. But honestly, I think Lorenzo is the bigger problem here. He's exactly the sort of man who makes a much better friend than boyfriend because he values his friendships far more than any romantic relationship. He immediately takes Lola's side without really listening to Yulia and starts telling her she needs to apologize. If someone instantly backs another person without even hearing you out, they are absolutely not worth your time. Then he has the audacity to call Yaz disrespectful. Ugh, piss off, this man is such a dickhead. Watching him tell Yulia that he barely knows her and accusing her of being spiteful, I genuinely can't believe she sat there and took it. I would have fully supported her shoving a Solero straight into his belly button. Finally, I have to stand with Martha because every single one of these boys is now treating the Casa girls like they're lepers. Not one of them even made these women a coffee. The universal love language of the villa. They've barely spoken to them and have practically thrown them in the bin now that they've reunited with their original girls. The biggest offender is somehow Aiden, the only genuinely single boy in there who still can't be bothered to put any effort into Martha. Madness. At least Priya seems to be having a nice time with Jordan. I don't trust that man for a second, but thankfully she won't have to wait long before finding out exactly what he's about because movie night is just around the corner. Whew, that wraps up week 5. I'll be back next Monday to cover week 6. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you liked what you heard here, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, and consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps new people find it. You can also find me on Instagram at PopMonsterPod, and please DM me if you have any ideas for things you'd like me to cover in future episodes. Again, thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.